slides are visible or not?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Oh. So, good afternoon, everyone. So, today we'll continue our module 1, that is on semiconductor electronics, dealing with all basics of semiconductors. So, if we try to quickly recapitulate the last class, so where we have seen the variety of material having variety of conductivity in metal, semiconductor, as well as into insulator. And eventually we need all these materials. It is not that we can only work with the semiconductor or metal when fabricating any device. So we need insulator too. So then we have seen that apart from the different material in terms of conductivity, we also need material in terms of crystallinity. So another thing I think I forgot to mention last class. So this image is actually this is actual image. This is TEM image, transmission electron microscope image. So this is actual image of your MOS stack, which is again part of your MOSFET. So then we have seen this different material. Then we have also seen in periodic table there are different semiconductors. Of course, the silicon, germanium, which are the elemental semiconductor, and silicon, the most widely used semiconductors for most of the electronic component or appliance we are using. And apart from that silicon, we also have compound semiconductor made of different material like group 3,5, group 2,6 material. But end of the day, you need to satisfy this each outermost orbital electron and this 3,5 semiconductor or this group 2,6 semiconductor, they can satisfy this requirement. So again, the advantage, there are different advantages for this compound semiconductor, which we have also discussed compared to conventional silicon. So these are something we discussed again. So we discussed this bond model. So to discuss any semiconductor problem, we need to take this three approach. So one is the bond model, and then the band model, and then the most detailed semiconductor behavior we can understand using this band structure. So primarily we saw the bond model. Okay, another thing I'll just mention at this point, because see, these are the model, or these are the way how to discuss semiconductor problem, and sometimes it is required that we need all these models, like to discuss particular phenomena of a particular semiconductor. Perhaps we'll take that this advantage of all these models. So anyway, so just at the beginning, I'm trying to give an overview of all this model. Then to discuss a particular model, we'll take help from all these models. So then this band model and band structure. Okay, so these are the unit cell which we discussed, two-dimensional as well as three-dimensional unit cell we discussed, and so we have also seen what are the different primitive unit cells are there, like you know, the simple cubic, then body centered or BCC, and then face centered or FCC. And then we have also discussed that our silicon, which has diamond lattice or diamond structure, so it is nothing but two interpenetrating FCC crystal or face centered cubic crystal. So again, these are the some important thing that we need to understand to calculate the number of atoms, because end of the day we are interested to to quantify the conductivity of this semiconductor. And then obviously if we can understand how to quantify conductivity of semiconductor, we can modulate the conductivity of semiconductor. Again, finally this once we will be able to modulate the conductivity of semiconductor, we can build devices out of semiconductor or any material. So that is why we need to understand this atomic arrangement, these crystals, and the associated all concepts. So then this is where we have shown how to calculate the Miller indices. So this is how to represent a particular plane of your semiconductor, because depending on different plane of your semiconductor, the number of atoms may change. So that is why we need to identify different planes of your semiconductor. So then, okay, so from this particular slide onwards, we'll continue today. As we mentioned earlier, that in this cubic crystal we have 6 parameters. 6 parameters means, see, you can see in a cubic this A, B, C. So these are the atomic distance in X, Y, and Z direction, as well as there are 3 angles between your, you can see here this alpha, beta, and gamma. So based on the different variation, your crystal could be different. So like in simple cubic, you know that your alpha, beta, gamma all are 90 degree, and this A equals to B equals to C. But it may not be the case for all the crystal, or may not be the case for all the semiconducting material. So depending on this variation, we will have different type of crystal. So typically 14, so this is called Brebis lattice. So there are 14 types of this lattice possible, based on your different combination of edges as well as angles. So these are the some crystal structure. Of course, this is just for your information, and our most interested this semiconducting material, that is silicon, is that we'll discuss mostly. So this is a diamond crystal. But for the other semiconducting material, like all the compound semiconductor, we have different type of crystal. So we'll just show you shortly. So this is once again this I think you know this bond model. This is a tetrahedron structure. So here we have so this is again your silicon. So here you can see this one atom at the center, and then we have this other 4 atoms. So we'll discuss all this in detail. Just this is again, I think you know that in case of silicon, we have this this kind of 2-dimensional representation of silicon crystal. So where one particular silicon atoms are surrounded with the other 4 atoms, and the 4 outermost electron of any particular silicon atoms are forming covalent bond with the neighboring silicon atoms. So these are the covalent bonds. And now if we can break one particular covalent bond, so then we'll get one electron. At the same time, we'll also get one hole. So hole is nothing but the absence of electron. And this hole as well as electron can move within the crystal. So this is some concept regarding your bond model. And then we have crystal structure that just you have seen that in case of silicon, we have this diamond crystal which has 2 interpenetrating FCC. Now in case of gallium arsenide, this is called zinc blende. So zinc blende and silicon, the crystal structure wise both are same, but since this gallium arsenide is compound semiconductor, that means it has both gallium atoms as well as arsenic atoms. So then this particular diamond crystal is termed as zinc blende crystal. So the structure wise same, But here you can see we have this gallium as well as arsenic atom. So gallium atom as well as arsenic atom. So that is why this is called zinc valence structure. But the structure wise there is no difference. Obviously there could be difference in terms of lattice constant. So now this other calculation, that means how many silicon atoms are there, what is the packing fraction. So all these concept we need to solve some numericals that will do this Friday after I think 3 to 4 we have scheduled class. Then after 4 onwards we'll perform all these numericals, and we'll try to see the other related concept which will help us to solve the numericals. So this is another this material which is currently very important. Another compound semiconductor is gallium nitride. So gallium nitride, you can just if you look at, you can see this is different. This crystal structure is called hexagonal crystal. So so it has a different so like I think this is not a detailed image. So but still you can see, so this one atom, so these are gallium atoms. So then we have nitrogen atom, but you can see this is not cubic. So this is called hexagonal crystal. And again, why I am emphasizing on all this crystal structure and everything, because these are the fundamental concept which will eventually decide your crystal behavior or your semiconductor behavior. That is why understanding all this concept is important. So okay, these are some concepts we can skip for the time being. So these are the some questions which we'll solve on Friday. So these are something we covered. So these are the slides will help us to have that tutorial session. So this is one model. Okay. Okay, then I think we can. So now, we'll start the band structure or band model. Like we'll see how the bands are forming in the semiconductor. So once again our objective like is to this rho r equals to rho L by A. So simple resistance formula. So here our primary concern is to find out this conductivity. So this rho or conductivity or resistivity here. So on which parameter this resistivity rho will depend, that is our main objective to find out. So if we look at or the most like if we look at from microscopic point of view, we know the atoms are the fundamental building blocks of your material. So now microscopically or in case of atoms, the simplest atom as we know, a hydrogen atom. So this is a hydrogen atom, and here so we have one proton in the nucleus and the electrons surrounding the proton or the nucleus. Now from basic, so here I need to just discuss some basic of quantum mechanics, although I'll not go into detail of quantum mechanics because this course is not for detailed quantum mechanics discussion. But still we need to take the help of this quantum mechanics, and we need to understand to discuss this fundamental semiconductor problem. So from the basic of quantum mechanics, if we understand, so it is the wave particle duality. So if I write wave particle duality. So please excuse for my this handwriting because I am not very good at utilizing this pen tab. So this is the most fundamental concept of quantum mechanics, wave particle duality. So what does it say? So it says like any particle can behave as a wave, or any wave can also behave as a particle. So, but the rule or the law that governs this fundamental nature of material or matter or whatever you say. So it is the de Broglie's wavelength. So what is de Broglie's wavelength? If we once again try to recapitulate our, I think you have gone through this subject in your school or class 10+2. So de Broglie wavelength. So de Broglie wavelength is actually lambda. The wavelength is equals to h Planck constant divided by momentum p. So wavelength of particle or wavelength of wave is equal to the Planck's constant divided by p. And what is the Planck's constant value? So it is of the around of 6.62 into 10 to the power minus, I guess, 34 joules second. So now the question is, when a particle will behave as a wave? Like, is it true that all the particles, let's say, I think anyway, so either you are now seeing at your mobile screen or your laptop or desktop. So whether this desktop, laptop or mobile, can they be treated as a wave? Let's say we just throw our this laptop mobile, and then can we treat this let's say flying mobile as a wave, or is it a particle? And which concept or which fact will decide whether this is a wave or a particle? So the thing is, you can consider this flying like after throwing your mobile, you can consider this as a wave, but the problem is, see this constant value. So the constant value here we have 10 to the power minus 34. So here we have 10 to the power minus 34 on the numerator, and in the denominator your mobile will have some weight that m, and with some speed, let's say v. So that will obviously be some positive value. So the eventually the total this lambda will be of the order of I think more than minus 34. So now you can see, although this you're flying this mobile or whatever the object you are throwing, so it could behave as a wave, but the thing is this wavelength is very small, negligibly small. That is why we are not considering those flying object as a wave. But now this situation will change when we'll consider this electron or all these subatomic particle, because in that case, see, when we'll consider this electron has your mass of 10 to the power minus 31 kg. So now you can see, when you will divide, then electron, this is the m, then with some velocity, so it will be then another this value. So then if you just divide this, calculate this lambda, then this lambda will be of some significance. So it will get some significant value. So that is why we need to consider all this this subatomic or this particle as a wave, or this wave behavior comes into or will be able to notice this wave behavior. So this so try to understand. So always see, I do also believe, like, don't try to memorize something, but try to understand the basic and basic phenomena, or what is actually happening. So the thing is this order 10 to the power minus 34, this Planck's constant, and that is why there's all this object we see obviously using our bare eye. So because if you use some electron microscope, we can even see these electrons and other things. So whatever the particle we see using our BRI, we cannot sense or we do not treat them as a wave because of this Planck's constant. Okay. So this is the wave particle duality. Now in case of your atoms, so again, once again, let us go back to this hydrogen atom. So this, because this is the simplest atom, that is why we are discussing or starting our discussion using this hydrogen atom, where we have one proton at the nucleus and one electron just roaming around this nucleus. Now see, this electron is bounded to this nucleus. This electron is not free electron, so it cannot go wherever it wants. So it will take a certain path around this your nucleus, and again this lambda actually represents the probability of electron presence. So so this lambda. So see, this is a particle here we are showing particle behavior. But once again, unlike this normal this object like what we see using our BRI, this electron has this wave behavior also. Now, what is that wave behavior? That we need to discuss, because this electron can show like it has significant this lambda value or wavelength. So it shows your wave behavior also. So now how to discuss that, like how to consider this wave surrounding this nucleus. So I once again I believe that I think most of you have gone through this fundamental this physics in your class 10+2. So still let us just revise those concepts, and we'll try to correlate this concept with our semiconductor problem. So then, so what will be the behavior when we consider electron as wave? So it will behave something like this. So this is the behavior of this nucleus or this atom or hydrogen atom when we are considering electron as a wave, because when we are considering this electron as a wave, it will take this wave behavior. So you cannot. So this lambda is actually the presence. It represents the probability of electron presence. Electron presence. So because here we cannot deterministically say where you have this electron. And another thing, perhaps this is one of the condition to have your electron surrounding your proton or nucleus, is that this wave is standing wave. Remember, just this term try to follow, like this is not other wave, but this is a standing wave. When you are considering your electron as wave, so these are standing wave, because it's sustained within this circumference of your nucleus. Now when we'll have this standing wave, so in order to have this standing wave, this circumference of this circle, this circle, you can see this where you had this an electron we considered as particle. So this is the circumference, and then in order to have this standing wave, this circumference of this your this circumference of yours, this circle of this circle will be integer multiple. the circumference of, okay, let me, circumference of this circle, which is again, if we consider this radius as r, so it will be 2 pi r. So 2 pi r will be equals to some integer multiple of lambda. So the circumference of this circle, when it will be equivalent to some integer multiple of lambda. So integer. So when we'll have this condition satisfied, then only we'll get this standing wave. When this circumference, that means 2 pi r, this 2 pi r will be equals to n lambda, that means in integer multiple of your this wavelength. So then only we'll have this standing wave. And in nucleus or in this atom, this wave has to be standing wave. Now, what is the this see why another conclusion from this concept is that, okay, let me first write this equation, then it will be easier to follow. So 2 pi r is equals to the n lambda in order to have this this standing wave or sustainable orbit. So remember, I think you also know that electron cannot just take any orbit to roam around your nucleus. So this is again once again this condition that it needs to satisfy. So so this is again is called condition for sustainable orbit. So where 2 pi r equals to n lambda. So these are the allowed path for your electrons to roam around the nucleus. And now, so okay, so another so this is the r radius, and where you can see this it depends on the integer multiple. So integer multiple again, so these are integer multiple. So from this particular equation, another conclusion we can draw from here is that all this wave, this circumference, or again these paths are discretized or quantized. So this it cannot take any path. So soon we'll see that due to this dependence or this due to this condition for having your standing wave, that means your circumference of the circle will be equal to the integer multiple of wavelength. So due to this condition, actually we have discrete energy level. So I think we know that in our atoms, typical atoms, we have different energy levels, which will be taken by these electrons, and then it will just roam around the nucleus. So why this quantization is happening? So the main origin of this concept or this concept is from this particular standing wave requirement. So now here we are once again getting one relationship between the r radius of this orbital with the wavelength your lambda, and this can also be written just in terms of your momentum. So lambda equals to h by p. So here we have two unknown. So r is unknown, as well as this momentum is also unknown. So once again, to solve this, solve for this radius as well as momentum, we need another equation. So which equation? So from this particular problem or this concept, what is the other relation we can get. So other relation is of course this this electrostatic force by which your these electrons are protons are attracting your electrons, and again you know this you have this centripetal force which will be equal to this electrostatic force. So then if we write another, so here we can term it equation 1, and equation 2 will be your electrostatic force between your nucleus or proton with the electron, one by 4 pi epsilon naught is E square divided by R square, which is equals to your centripetal force, which is m naught v square divided by R. Now if we write this numerator in terms of momentum, it will take this type of form. I hope till now this all the concepts are clear. If it is not clear, just let me know. So now we have, you can see, we have two equations relating R and momentum. So here R momentum, and here also you have this relationship between your R as well as this momentum. Now if we solve these two equations simply by replacing this R or P, so I will go to next slide. So then we'll see that your R, or the radius of that orbit will be epsilon naught n square h square divided by pi m naught e square. So this will be your radius, and your momentum will be m naught e square divided by two epsilon each n. So these are the two equations for your radius and momentum. Now, well, so equations are equation, like what is the significance of these two equations? What is the take-home message? What is the insight of this equation? So the thing is, if you look at these two equations or this term carefully, see all these values are constant. Like if I take, let's say, so if we look at, if I can take this different maybe color, it will be easier for you to follow. So if we see all these terms here, as well as if we see this all this term in momentum, so these are essentially all constant. So this m naught, then is electronic mass, then your electron charge, then epsilon of then h, Planck's constant. So these are all constant. Another so apart from this, we have what you have this n, and n we have already mentioned, it is the integer. So now from this two expression, you can firmly comment or conclude that this radius will be on radius will that will be followed for your by your electron when surrounding your proton, they are discretized or quantized. So here comes the term quantization. So in case of momentum also, So this it depends mainly on whether your n equals to 1, 2, 3. So then your momentum as well as your radius is getting quantized. So both the parameters are getting quantized. So now again, now if we go back to the concept from where we started this derivation, see, to have this standing wave, to have this standing wave of electrons surrounding your nucleus, this wave will take discrete or quantized values of r as well as your momentum. So it cannot take any value or any, so there cannot be a, like these electrons cannot take just any radius or any cannot have any momentum. So these are quantized in order to have this standing wave behavior. So this is the concept, and see, these are all correlated. Try to follow. Then you don't need to memorize everything, and I think then you will enjoy this subject also. Now, another another thing just related to this. See, this electrons, when it is having this standing wave behavior, it is also bounded to this nucleus. So this electron, when it is revolving around this nucleus, it is also bounded. So this is not free electron. So these electrons, this is attracted by this nucleus. So this is not free electron. So this is another thing, that when your this electrons are bounded, so then you will have your negative energy. Okay, so this is something, some other concept. So for quantization to happen, just we have seen that your electrons will be bounded. Now for these bounded electrons, your energy of the electron will be negative. Why this is negative? What is the problem if it has the positive energy? Because see, when your electron will have positive energy, so that means it can freely roam around anywhere in the crystal. But that is not the case for these bounded electrons. So now see, this for quantizations to happen or to have this standing wave, the electrons needs to be bounded, and this bounded electron has total energy. That means your kinetic energy plus potential energy equals to will be the negative. Once any particle has positive energy, it is free. We'll see like what is the concept. Like obviously in our semiconductor we have a lot of free in electrons. They are essentially contributing to our current. So what will be the energy state and all that? So we'll shortly see that. So now let me write this just for your. So for quantization to happen, this electron needs to be bounded. And when these electrons, they are bounded, not free particle, so it has negative energy, total negative energy, negative total energy. So now, okay, if I try to calculate the total energy of this electron, what is the E total? E total equals to obviously E kinetic plus E potential, and you know this kinetic energy is equal to half mv square, or which can be also presented by p square by 2 m naught. And now this potential energy that this nucleus is attracting your this electron, orbital electron, so it is equals to 1 by 4 pi epsilon E square by R, not R square, because this is the energy. So now if we just see this this particular term can be written as P square by 2. So when solving for this your these two parameter R and P, so you will get that this expression is also equals to P square by m naught. So this potential energy will take this form, and now you can clearly see. Let me write here that it is having total energy negative P square by 2 m naught. And once again, if I put this all these values of P which we mentioned here, if we mention all these values of P, it will take this form. M square now will have e to the power 4 divided by 8 epsilon naught square e square, and now that interesting portion which is 1 by n square. So once again, see, this is now the energy. So this was the radius that can be occupied by the electron when orbiting or when revolving around the nucleus. This is the momentum. So these are all quantized. Now finally, your electron is the energy of your electron is also quantized. So this is the total energy of electron. Now look at here. So once again, I can take this different color. So now see, this is all constant, and this is this n can only have this integer value. So once again, this your energy of electrons are quantized. That is why we have discrete energy levels when we have electrons surrounding or roaming around the nucleus. So now if we write this in terms of milli-electron volt, because these are all constant, so if we just mention all the constant values, so it will be minus 13.6 divided by n square. So this is the quantization. Once again, we have quantized energy levels. Now, just to mention, so this fact was first experimentally observed. If you know that in case of hydrogen atom, this experiment, I forgot who did this experiment. So there was different spectral bands for hydrogen atoms. So then how to explain? See, in research, in physics, all this research, many a times this first the experimental observation came. Then there was a lot of postulation. So how to explain that phenomenon? So also similarly, in case of hydrogen atom, I think first this observation I forgot, but then actually Bohr explained this observation. So in case of hydrogen atom, there is some different spectral bands with a different color. Now why these bands, different discrete bands are coming? So then it was explained by Bohr using this discrete concept and how this quantization is happening in terms of in case of your electron of electron energy, like energy of electron. So now I need one more slide. Just hold. So now, if I try to draw this discrete energy in case of a single electron, how does it look like? Let's say you have electron, you have this proton or nucleus positive, and then we have different energy level for electrons. So first one, when our this n equals to when n equals to 1, we'll have, so we'll just simply see when we have n equals to 1, 2, 3, what is the energy value for an electron. So this is in terms of electron volt. The unit is electron volt. So now for n equals to 1, we have the energy level of 13.6 electron volt. Now next energy level we'll have, then that means 13.6 divided by when we'll put this n equals to 2, then 4. So 13.6 divided by 4, it will be something around 3.4. So these are, remember, just notice, these are all negative value. 3.4 electron volt around. So then the next energy level which we'll have is, then we need to divide this 13.6 divided by 3 square, that means 9. It will be 1.5 around. So these are the energy levels for your electrons. Now above this, we'll have once again like, okay, so the starting energy level will be E equals to 0. Because once again, these are all bounded electrons. So these electrons which will be here in this discrete energy level, so they are bounded to this nucleus or proton. So then that is why this is this energy is negative. And now if we start from equals to 0, so then obviously if we take n equals to 4, 5, 6, then we will have a lot of energy states just below this equals to 0. So there will be a lot of other energy levels depending on the value of your n. So this is for particular one atom of again here whatever we are doing in case of hydrogen. So that is this fundamental like basic atom. That is why we are using this. Now the question, next question is, what is above this equals to 0? What is happening? And what about these energy levels above it equals to 0? Whether the energy levels are discrete or continuum. Because see, above equals to 0, the electrons are not bounded to your nucleus or proton. So then you can, this electron can take any energy level. So that means you have continuous energy level above equals to 0. There is no quantization or discretization above equals to 0. Again, they are not bounded to your this proton or nucleus. They are free electron. So once your electrons are free, so then it will have this energy or here. So here actually electrons are free, not at all bounded to your nucleus. So after this concept of single atom and associated proton, nucleus, and electron, in our semiconductor, this problem obviously we have a lot of electrons, and then your this atoms also has not one electron or one proton. It also has like many electrons. Like in case of silicon, this is group it has an atomic number of 14. So 14 electrons are there in case of silicon atom. You can you know. Now what will happen in that case? Okay. So what is the time? It is already 12:50. Okay, let us start. So now in case of atoms with the higher atomic number, so we'll have the similar phenomena. So once again, let me take this Z as a atomic number. So we have, let us consider 2 atoms. So this is an atomic number. So these many protons are there in the nucleus. So now once again we will have these discrete energy levels. Again, there will be a lot of energy, other energy levels. Now here also similarly, this another atom will have with in so similar to this individual single atom. So now you are having this atom of with the atomic numbers Z. So now if these are two like separate atoms, now what will happen when we'll start to bring two atoms closer and closer? So these are two individual atoms. So this is again obviously like these are all thought experiment. This in reality it is not possible, but still from concept point of view, in order to understand this concept, let us try to think that you have two atoms with the atomic number Z, and you are trying to bring them closer and closer. Like these are the discrete energy levels. So what will happen to these energy levels? Whether they will remain same as like individual atom, or whether there will be any change when we'll bring these two atoms closer and closer. So the thing is, I think you know that there is something called Pauli's exclusion principle. So the Pauli's exclusion principle says exclusion. So the Pauli's exclusion principle says that no two atom and this electron could have similar quantum number, that you know. Now when here we have another interesting thing. Okay, so now when we bring them these two atoms closer and closer, so obviously there will be split in energy level. So this energy level cannot be like same. So this particular energy level, let's say at 13.6, it will not be the same. So the electrons which will take this energy level will be little different, because following this Pauli's exclusion principle. So no two electron will have the similar quantum number. So obviously you know that this for particular one energy level, it can have two states, that is spin up and spin down. But here you have lot of electrons, so there will be split in energy levels. So what will happen when we have this split in energy level? Because see, in case of crystal, semiconductors crystal, we have this fixed atoms at a certain distance. You know that just we have seen in case of bond model. So that is why I mentioned also, like we sometimes we need to once again like take or borrow the concept of this bond model. So once again, I think I'm not drawing correctly, but still. So here these atoms are these are discrete atoms. They are close to each other, and now due to this Pauli's exclusion principle, if we bring these two atoms closer and closer, so there will be split in energy level. And let me draw this. Let me go to next slide. So again, you know, this is some chemistry. So if we just consider for the time being diamond atom, so which has the atomic number of 6. So let's say this is 2s.
Sir,
This is,
sorry to
yes.
interrupt you, sir. We have a class like after 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll just stop. Then I'll just stop. Okay, I'll just stop. I'll just continue it, and next class I'll continue. So, okay, else I'll stop here. I'll not go.
Excuse me,
Okay.
sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I just had a question.
So, given that the Schrodinger atomic model is more realistic than the Bohr model, is there a specific reason why we use the Bohr model for when discussing band formation physics?
See, that is why I told you, like, there are also some concept like band structure. So this band structure, it will give you more detailed picture of your semiconductor problem, and Schrodinger equation, as rightly pointed out by you, it will give more detailed picture. But to understand this this fundamental phenomena, it helps, like this Bohr model helps more. Okay, so that is the thing. Like this is, you know, this some abstraction level. Like if you want to understand this semiconductor problem in more detail, then you can of course take those approach like Schrodinger equation, band structure, and all. But from upper level abstraction, this is the approach to like just easily discuss or explain this semiconductor.
Yes,
Or
so because I'm not able to understand how the Bohr model is able to justify free particles above the bound states, because that's something Schrodinger's equation does better. Like,
okay,
like
that is why. So here in Bohr model, I think if that is that experiment, so where is in case of hydrogen this atom, they got that spectrum, different spectrum, so discretized spectrum. So Bohr actually explained that spectrum. So I don't know, like I don't know exactly the history, but that is why this Bohr model is capable enough to discuss this discretized energy level, not the continuum energy level
yes, sir.
above.
So that's what my question was, that it's not able to describe continuum states
No,
above
no,
the bound states, right?
no, absolutely fine. But here to understand these bands in semiconductor, so because there we deal with mostly these boundary electrons also. Like obviously these free electrons are there. So that is why this Bohr model is helpful. So because Schrodinger equation, you are whatever you are saying is fine, but this band model helps to understand the semiconductor problem. Because in semiconductor, you know, after this, just I will show that this conduction band, valence band, these are forming. So then you have the concept of electrons, holes, the electrons are forming. So they can be well explained using this Bohr model.
Okay,
So
thank you, sir. Thank you.
so okay, so that's it. I'll stop here. Maybe
Sir, I have a
I'll continue.
request.
Yeah,
Hello.
please.
Sir, can you send us the Google invite so that we'll get this lectures on a Google Calendar? Actually,
Google
I've
Calendar.
yes, actually I've missed classes because I didn't get any notification. So can you send the invite for the meet to E311 group?
I'll see how to again. I'm not very good managing all this calendar. I'll see how it is possible, and obviously I'll do that. Again, just for your information, I already uploaded the previous, I think, 3 lectures in the Moodle.
Yeah.
So you can just watch them.
Okay.
So any other question from anyone? I think
Yes, sir.
yes, please.
Yes, sir. I had a question about Miller indices. Like, what is their use? Why do we use them?
Miller indices, why do we use them? Okay, good. See, uh, yeah, maybe this picture or yeah, this picture. So we go to this. See here, just look at this 2 plane. One, we have this ABCD, this top, this ABCD, so this ABCD. This is one plane, and another plane that is blue colored. So that is AC. Let's say this ACEA. Okay. So now if we look at, so this top plane has how many atoms? 4 atoms. And similarly, it will have different number of electrons. And now if we look at this ACEF plane, it has 5 atoms because this is a PCC crystal. So then the number of atoms as well as the number of electrons will be different. Now the next question is you can ask me, sir, why these planes are so important? See, now, okay, let me show you, let's say MOSFET. I think MOSFET is some basic concept you also already know. So, source, drain, and on top of this you have this insulator or oxide, then gate. And this is the semiconductor, like this is the semiconductor region. Now see, your electrons or the electrons are flowing between source and drain through this interface. Here you have the channel. Now, how many electrons will be here at this interface? That will decide your total current, obviously. Now, see, it is possible that you can take this surface, ACEF surface of semiconductor. See, this surface is actually, if you look at from this top, so this surface is actually this plane. Now, if we use, or if you see this ACEF plane from top, then you will have more number of electrons compared to if we take semiconductor in this way, like your A, B, C, D. If you take this plane as a plane of this interface, see this surface is eventually the interface of your MOS here. I don't know, are you getting my point? Like, if you look at from this top side, if you can see ABCD this plane, as well as you can also see, just this is a fabrication technique. You can just fabricate your source drain in such a way that here you are seeing that ACEF plane. So in that case, when you are taking this ACEF plane, you will have more number of atoms, and thereby you will have more number of electrons. So then the drain current may change because you have more number of electrons. So now that is why we need to index this crystal plane differently, because of this factor. Because now how to discuss this problem, like how to say this is, I think, if in case of silicon, see these are all the planes, like I don't know, so like this plane. So this is one plane. So here, if you fabricate or get the like, if you make your channel, MOSFET channel on top of this surface, you could have different number of electrons. Then if you make your if I draw this, it is a bit difficult. I'm not very good at drawing this. Let's say, like, if you draw your or if you build your device on this plate, you could have different number of atoms and different number of electrons. So your all drain current, see, finally your all device characteristics may be different depending on the different plane. That is why we need to identify all this plane, because, and this is this Miller indices. This Miller indices helps us to identify this Miller indices has nothing but this is a convention to identify different plane. That's it. And now what is the role or what is the advantage of this identifying this advantage? Because in many times we will see that this interface or this surface and the related carrier concentration, electron concentration, atomic concentration, it will be decided by the plane of the semiconductor or crystal. That is why we need to identify different crystal plane. Is this clear to some extent?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, maybe when we'll solve the numerical, it may be more clear. Again, just related to this point what you raised, say there is a saying like, okay, maybe we'll discuss it later. Okay, any other question? Anyone is here still? Okay, so then we are stopping here. And if you have any question, you can let us know, or else we'll stop here and we'll start next day, that means on Thursday. Once again, we'll meet Thursday from 2 to 3. Okay, Arpit, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I believe we all
Okay, sir.
left. Sarthak left. Okay, then I am signing off for today.
Okay, sir. Bye.